Hello fellow space engineers, this is Marcelo from ACFM Gaming, and today we're going to take a look at the long-awaited Blue Fleet from the Planet's release trailer. For this video I'm going to make a general overview of each individual ship, and then I'm going to focus on the bigger one, the Trireme, which is currently a work in progress by the author of this fleet, Conrad Larson, who kindly accepted my offer to do a review and maybe provide some suggestions on how to finish or maybe some features to include in it. What originally drew me towards seeking out these ships and trying to evaluate them is the fact that, well, not also they look good, they have an interesting architecture to them all, that they share some similarities between them, so kind of like they're being produced in the same shipyard, and it tells you that they are from the same faction. But also that I was actually subscribed to Conrad Larson's channel from quite a while, and I didn't put it together until recently that he was the author of those ships. So I went in and kind of like dug up his earlier designs, and I was able to see the progression of two of the ships, especially the one in the middle, the one that is now known as Challenger, the exploration lander ship, and the one in the very bottom, the Corvette class, known as the Sentinel. And for those ships I will do a separate video more in detail. So okay, let's begin. Now this fleet has ships from classes ranging from Corvette to cruiser, or heavy cruiser or super cruiser, depending on the final classification of the Trireme, which is the one at the top. The smaller vessel, the Sentinel, it's a heavy Corvette, mostly focused on defense, and it has the signature airlock system using the merge blocks that you will see in all of his creations. And the particularities of this one is that, from what I gather just by looking at the design, it has this zero elevation turret. It's only a rotating turret, so basically you can fire at an angle, like on the two sides, port and starboard, using that remote control that you see here with the camera. And it has a navigation bridge right on the front. So, and this is a trend that you're gonna see in his designs. Now, our own designs in the MTF fleet, they are mostly front towards enemy. So the nose is heavily armored, and the weapons are arranged to shoot towards the front. In his ships, you're gonna realize that they are mostly armed and armored also on the top and on the sides. So the tactic that I would suggest using with the ships is that of the orbiting tactic, maybe 45 degrees in relation to the enemy that you're facing. As you can see here, this Corvette has a soft underbelly, so you don't want to expose that. It also has zero weapons in the belly, so you want to basically expose the hard hat, the top part of the ship, which is where you find all those turrets. Now, following we have his support Corvette, which I would actually classify as a support frigate, and this one, he already made a video about it, so I'm not gonna, dwell too much on it. He actually explained it way better, since he's the author. But this is a ship that, well, you must be familiar with at this point. It's the one being used by Sockley and this crew in the streams, the live streams that they do. So, despite its appearance, which is pretty rectangular, this design actually lends itself very well to modifications. You just need to, do the piping and then start placing turrets or extra thrusters. Now, the characteristic of this ship is to support smaller vessels and to support the fleet. Then we follow with, this is his current version, I think the Mark II of the Challenger. Now, as you know, the one that was released first was unarmed, so it was purely an exploration ship. It had fewer vertical hydrogen thrusters, and upon its release, it had a loiter time in planet inside of a gravity well of around 5 minutes. So this is a ship that you could take inside of a planet, land it near a fuel source like a lake, refuel it, and then move around. It's not a ship that has a really high loitering capacity, so it's not like you're going to be, going around on the planet like bombarding things with it. So it's mostly an exploration ship. And like I said before, I'm gonna talk about this in an upcoming video. But this is based off, and I can say that now, of a destroyer hull, one of his earlier designs of the Alteron fleet that I was, like I mentioned before, I was subscribed long ago. So it's a design that is thin-hulled as most of his ships, as you'll see. It has an impressive, I would even call it like a AAA battery, because it's just aiming at the top and on the sides, and no weapons on the bottom, because this is meant to land on a planet. So this is meant to protect you against, those bombers that could be quite a threat inside of a planet's gravity well. Unlike in a space, which basically smaller ships are not a big threat or not a big deal for ships like this. But inside of a gravity well is different. Then we follow up with this, which this is kind of like trying to put it on to make a comparison with my own fleet. It's in between my destroyer and my cruiser class. So you could classify this as a battle cruiser. This is the Inquisitor. Now, as you can see, it's meant to be the heavy escort of the group, of the battle group. It's a heavy armor construction. It has an impressive array of top turrets. Once again, you wouldn't want to point this ship at an enemy directly, even though this is the heavy combatant, since it has a glass jaw, literally. And as long as you don't expose that and you just tilt on your side, do the 45-degree orbit, this ship should be devastating against similarly equipped ships, or maybe even larger combatants, depending on the weapons that you're using. And for our evaluation here, we're using only vanilla weapons. So it's been cleverly designed, trying to overcome, the annoyances of vanilla weaponry, like shooting each other, and also to prevent splash damage. You see each turret has kind of like a fighting position with a parapet, some sort of parapet to defend from that friendly fire. Although you will still have to be very, very careful with the missile turrets. Now, this ship has really, really interesting features that make it really, really durable, and I will show them to you when I'm doing the suggestions for the Trireme, which is the heaviest ship in this fleet. Now, the Trireme, I mean, we said that the Inquisitor is like a battle cruiser, has no hangar capacity, so it cannot carry smaller ships. And the Trireme is the opposite, in the sense that it's not as heavily armed nor heavily armored, yet it's larger, is not a carrier, and it's kind of like a cruiser. So you would classify this either as a support cruiser or an like the concept of the aviation cruiser that was toyed around at the end of the Second World War, and especially during the Cold War. The Soviet Navy had aviation cruisers, which were like smaller aircraft carrier types that would launch Beetle planes, and also had a sizable arrangement of missile silos, anti-shipping missile silos. So, and that's kind of the core concept that I want to focus my suggestions for this ship. To me, the most important thing when designing a fleet is the purpose. And as I said before in my earlier fleet videos, the classification of a ship has to follow that purpose.